Thank you all for coming. I'm excited about this. This is Welcome to Your Brain on Happiness. This is Your Brain on Happiness, a chemical story. And I'll explain what that means in just a minute. One thing I should mention, you may have noticed that we've got a little competition from about 6 o'clock today with the World Rugby Cup. And I know some of you are going to be discreetly checking your phones, and that's cool, because it will guarantee there are some chemicals going on related to happiness or unhappiness. So we'll just see what happens with this. Anyway, this is Your Brain on Happiness, a chemical story. And I've been working with positive psychology and English language teaching for about 15 years now, but most of that has been with cognitive psychology, what's going on behaviorally and mentally. And I think that's really important, but for the past few years, you keep hearing about dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and all these chemicals, and I just thought, well, that's something interesting to explore. What's going on in our brains and our bodies, actually. And what can we do as classroom teachers to, I don't like the word manipulate, but yes, to manipulate those neurotransmitters and hormones. Specifically, I'm going to look at dopamine, which I think everybody's heard of, serotonin, with the happiness chemical you've probably all heard of, oxytocin, which is very, very important, and what does it have to do with Kitty-chan, cortisol, which some of you may be surprised to hear included in a happiness presentation, because this is related to this. This is a stress hormone, but it's related to happiness. Endorphin, again, quite well known. BDNF, which is the most important chemical most of us have never heard of. And one source, not the only source, this is mentioned on your handout, Habits of a Happy Brain by Dr. Loretta Bruning. And Dr. Bruning is the head of the Inner Mammal Institute. And I tell you, when I read that, I thought, what? Because it sounds a little, she is from the Bay Area, isn't she? But she's also professor emerita at California State, East Bay. So, okay, she's got the bona fides. But part of what I'm going to talk about is related to her work, and which I recommend. But please keep in mind, because I'm going to talk about these chemicals separately, but as Tracy Tokuhama Espinosa points out, everything really influences everything else. So even though to understand these, we kind of need to separate them, nothing happens totally in isolation. And I want to start with an activity. First of all, can I get a quick show of hands? Where do you teach? How many of you teach college or university? Looks like most of it. High school? Junior high? Now or before? Okay, kids? Okay, great. Something else like Eikaiwa people, so you teach everything? Okay, great. Which was my background for years, so I appreciate that. Business? Okay. Are some of you part of the JALT Mind-Brain Education Special Interest Group? Okay, quite a few. If you're not, we publish a monthly newsletter about mind-brain education and language teaching. Stop by the booth on 10th floor? 10th floor, and we'll sign you up, and it's free. Okay, I do an activity with my students periodically called 5 Pictures, Good Things in My Life. And how this works, there are various ways to do it, but the way I usually do it is the homework for next week is to think about your own life. What's good in your life? What makes your life worth living? Please take 5 pictures. But here's the catch. One picture of each good thing. Do not take 100 pictures and show us 5. You can only take 5. Because I want them to slow down. I want them to think about it. I want them to savor. And we're going to do a variation on this in a minute. Then they take the 5 pictures, come back the next week, and we talk about it, and they ask questions. But that would take too long to do in a workshop. So we're going to do an activity called, first of all, 1 picture, good thing, singular, in Mark's life. And I'm going to show you 1 picture. And can I ask you to turn to the person next to you, and what would you ask? What are you not sure about? And here's the picture. Those of you who know me saw this coming. Hi. Can you turn to the person next to you? What's your question?
Question to you. Question about the picture. Question
It doesn't matter. Any kind of question. Mostly questions about the picture, but questions at the picture. Hi. Okay, great. Questions? Question?
So what's the thing on the left?
What's the thing? What's the food on the left? Bananas. Smoked bananas. Have you ever had smoked bananas? They are wonderful. You take bananas, slice them the long way, leave this peel on. You take a spoon, put little dents in them, put in some blueberries and raspberries and strawberries, little cinnamon, smoke them over a fruit wood, apple wood, something like that, on a cherry wood, 20 minutes. They are wonderful. Thank you, that's one of the questions I wanted. Anything else?
Where do you usually have your barbecue?
On my deck. I have a big deck. Daniel's part of it, I'm part of it. There's the JALT barbecue sig, right? We're informal. Hi.
Who do you barbecue with for?
My wife, my family. Anybody want, what's the meat? Chicken. What's the yellow stuff? Egg? No.
Corn?
No.
Ginger?
No. Mango. Because, well, first of all, which do you like better, chicken breast or chicken thighs? Chicken. Thighs, right? Why? Because it has more fat. That's why they taste better. Mango is a natural meat tenderizer. So you take chicken breast, which doesn't have a lot of fat in it, punch some holes, stick in chunks of mango, it juices them up, it softens them up as you cook. All right. Now, my main purpose was not to teach you about mango. Although, by the way, almost every tropical fruit is a meat tenderizer. Mango, papaya, pineapple. But my main point is about the WH questions. Because just by asking questions, you are doing 2 things. From a language teaching point of view, you're teaching the students to engage in a discourse strategy. Questions help the conversation keep going, number 1. And questions narrow the response. So it helps the questioner control the conversation. But in psychological point of view, the questions create what's called an active constructive response. And how you answer a question or how you ask a question determines, or at least gives direction to the interaction. So let's say, for example, just active constructive, your partner gets a job promotion. And I don't know if that means your partner in a pair work, or your life partner, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, somebody gets a job promotion. And let's say it's your life partner, okay? Come home and says, hey, I got a promotion. An active constructive response is saying something like, wow, great, tell me all about it. What are you going to be doing? When did you hear? How did they decide? A passive constructive response is, that's nice. Right? And you've probably run into that kind of thing. A passive destructive response, that's nice, what's for dinner? Right? And a active destructive response. Anybody want to take a shot at it? Oh, you're going to be even busier than you are now. Or it's going to put us in a different tax bracket. Or, right? I mean, like, how we ask questions really makes a difference. And it's use. And this is a strategy that's simple enough that students can keep it in their minds. They can work with it. So what I'd like to ask you to do is here's something you rarely hear teachers say. Can I ask you to take out your phone? And just find, assuming you have pictures on your phone, just find any picture you like and turn to the person next to you and partner ask one or two questions. Now, but of course, some students don't want to show their pictures. It's a privacy thing. Some students' battery died today. And I never want a student to be embarrassed because they don't have the coolest, latest phone, which leads to one of my favorite new jokes. How do you lead a flock of sheep? Release a new iPhone. Daniel got it. So I have these little cards that say, imagine the picture, describe it. So if they don't want to show a picture on their phone, they just imagine the situation. I don't have them draw the picture. I used to do that, but this requires more language. So if anybody doesn't want to show a picture, hi, cool. Can I just turn to the person next to you, show them a picture, partner, ask questions. We'll spend about a minute on this.
No, it's dinner.
Who are you?
I don't have a cell phone.
Pardon?
I don't have a cell phone.
Good for you. Anybody else need this? Guys who came late, there are a couple of handouts up there if you want them. I mean, now or later, it doesn't matter. Did you guys get the handouts? They're here if you want them, now or later. Both gray and yellow.
Sorry to bother you. I had a few problems, so I couldn't come any earlier. I'm really sorry.
Oh, come on in.
Everything's set up.
Sure. Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's fine.
All good.
Yeah.
A couple other things, but
Okay, we're good. We're good. Yeah. Excuse me. Time. Excuse me. Hi. Mood check. How do you feel right now? Well, it's the end of the day. You're tired. But did you notice what was happening with this activity? You were mentally recycling positive emotion. Because I asked you to pick a picture of something good. You were re-feeling that positive experience. Because like happiness, at least part of it, is not a matter of having more and more and more and more happy experiences. That's called hedonism, and it's pretty shallow. Happiness or positivity is more about having more and more and more experiences of positive emotion, and mentally revisiting them, mentally recycling them, is a great way to very easily access them. And this is a whole lot more interesting to talk about than sometimes than what's your favorite movie or what's your favorite sport. Today may be different. Okay, but anyway, so that was 5 pictures, good things. If you go to my website, you can download this activity, you can download the card, there's all kinds of stuff for you. What was happening, the reason you were feeling good doing that is dopamine. And has everybody heard of dopamine? This is probably the most famous neurotransmitter. Dopamine is responsible, and I said everything's connected to everything, okay? But dopamine is responsible for memory, motivation, and focus. Now think about it. We're teachers. Memory, motivation, focus. That's like, if we can get there, we're way over halfway there, right? And there are many ways to trigger dopamine, but one of the best is emotion. Yeah. And I love emotion in the classroom. A lot of textbooks do not like emotion. Because emotion is emotional. You know, the publishers don't like it. I mean, they edit emotional stuff out. But you can add it. Okay, we're talking about brain science, and I promise everything I say in this session is true, but I'm trying to keep it real simple. The brain cells, neurons, don't actually touch each other, right? There's this little gap, that's a synapse. And to make, and synapse, it's the connections is how we learn stuff, right? Making trails, as it were, through the brain. Now, if you want to make synapse efficient slowly, repetition, which is why repetition has been part of language teaching forever. If you want to make synapse quickly, emotion. It's like it burns it into your brain, right? Okay, so emotion is a really good way to get there by showing a positive picture, talking about a positive experience, answering questions about it. You were dealing with emotion. Other dopamine triggers. Pleasure. Why do you think they call it dopamine? Sleep, which for our students is literally a very serious problem. A lot of our students are literally sleep deprived. Exercise, which is why I asked you to come up and get the handout rather than giving it to you. And I do that in class. It's like, handouts, come and get them. Goal completion. Yeah? So it could be as simple as write today's goals on the board. Today we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then as we go through class, check them off. And so the students notice them. Celebrate small victories. I remember a day I've got one class of non-majors. They are elementary education, early childhood majors. First day of class, we were doing a find someone who. One of the questions is find somebody who likes English. 34 students, 3 said yes. I said, I get it, and we're gonna work on that, and you're gonna experience success. Well, about middle of July, we were doing this fluency activity, and they were all using English for more than a half hour. And I said, guys, did you notice that? Did you realize you just used English and in many cases forgot what you were doing, meaning you were less conscious of language as language because you were just focused on the communication. And when you notice stuff like that, point it out. Celebrate it. Stress, which has a very bad reputation, but how many of your students like games? Virtually everybody, right? And game writers are masters of stress because they're doing stress in these little bite-sized chunks and giving you success, right? And that's dopamine, small rewards. Cliffhangers are really good. Why? I'll tell you later. Cliffhangers are great attention getter because it gets you focused. So, dopamine, let's move on to serotonin. And you've heard of this, and it's often called the happiness chemical, or it's very much associated with positive mood. Here's something a lot of people don't realize. When you think neurons, you think brain, right? But your body is like a second brain, especially the gut. In the middle. So a comparison. You have about 85 billion neurons in your brain. You got over 500 in your body. That ain't nothing. And with numbers that big, I don't know what a billion is. I mean, I can't. So I give the students the numerals and say, how do you say that in Japanese? And they have to, it's hapyakoku something. Anyway, but I give them the numerals, so they have to actually figure it out. Neurotransmitters identified, over 100 in the brain, over 40 in the body. Dopamine production, half of it is in the body. Serotonin production, 95% is in the body. And they both affect blood flow, and I mentioned blood flow already because oxygen to the brain is so important. And you're taking pictures, which is totally cool, but I'm going to give you a source where you can download this stuff. Serotonin triggers bright light, which is why, okay, rainy season, and we don't see the sun for a month. Right? And then suddenly there's a sunny day and you just feel so much better, right? And part of that serotonin. Did you know I don't want to get into a political thing, right? But all of us in Japan love having national health. Did you know in Scandinavia, because they have these long winters, national health will send you to a resort in Israel to get sun. And like, how cool is that? Exercise is really good for serotonin. Meditation triggers serotonin. Feeling respected. Yeah? Which is a good thing to think of next time you feel like bitching out of class. Right? I mean, respect really, really counts. I teach my students yoga breathing. And I say, well, I'm not from California. I'm not trying, sorry, Daniel. What I'm trying to, well, first of all, I'll give you this is what I teach them. Number one, out through the mouth, in through the nose. Because your mouth is bigger than your nostrils. And you're trying to get rid of the old, dead air. Okay. Regular breath is about 250 milliliters of air. There are about 2 liters of air in your lungs. So you're trying to get rid of the old air. And the way I teach them, and let's try this together. I do out for the count of 6. Hold for 5, in for 4, because I'm trying to get rid of the old air. And we'll just try it 2 or 3 times. Okay, so out, hold, in, hold, Anybody feel a little lightheaded? Yeah, if you don't do this regularly, you will feel dizzy. But I do it with my students with enough regularity so that I'm not trying to teach them yoga. I'm trying to teach them how to control their own breathing. Because breathing, okay, most body functions are either autonomic nervous system, which is you don't think about your heartbeat, etc., or it's voluntary. Breathing is one of the few things that can be either one, which means you can use yoga breathing before tests, before job interviews, before presentations, if you're doing that, as a way to just like, everybody gets butterflies before a presentation. That's the most normal thing in the world. But if you can do it, not only can you control it, you know that you can control it yourself, right? Anytime they want to control their mind and body, or their mental state. And you can do it privately in public, right? Because you're not going to, you're in a room full of people and like, oh, you're not going to do physical yoga, right? But you can do breathing in the room full of people, and unless you're doing it really noisily like I did as a demonstration, nobody's going to notice. So it's privately in public, and it's good. Okay, savoring. Savoring, which we tend to associate with food. but you can savor anything. To attend to, appreciate, and enhance positive experiences. Okay? What you were doing when you took out your phone and showed a picture was savoring whatever that picture was of, right? And remembering positive events triggers serotonin, right? Which is why, like, many of us go into class on Monday and say, what'd you do over the weekend? Which is fine. And it may get you the result you want, but I find it better to go and say, what'd you do over the weekend that was really good? Yeah. I'm consciously trying to make use of serotonin. I'm trying to set the tone. Okay? Next, now we're going to start getting messy. Oxytocin, which is sometimes called the cuddle chemical, the hugging hormone. I'd like you to imagine young lovers, not too graphically. They are not having sex, okay? But two young people in love. What's your image? A very common image is holding hands. Yeah? And you see it constantly. And it's very, very common among young people. Actually, it's even stronger among older people because they associate it so quickly. But holding hands is an oxytocin release. That's why young people do it. That's why it feels so good. Bonding. Oxytocin triggers bonding. Which is why, and I teach in a women's university, so I have to be careful about how I explain it, but I find people totally get this. One reason women's breasts are so sensitive is when you are nursing a baby, you get a total oxytocin rush that bonds the mother to the child, and it gives the child the healthiest energy drink in the world, right? And I just think that is such a beautiful example of evolution or nature or God or whatever you want to call it. But isn't it beautiful how that system works? By the way, it works with fur babies too. Okay, so if you have dogs, wanted or unwanted, just to explain it, this guy's famous in the States. I don't actually know who he is, but...
Oh, you know, a lot of people ask me, after a long day of voiceover or writing or doing all those creative things that I do, how do I relax? Well, like many other Americans, I come home and I pet my dog. You see, petting your dog is one of the most relaxing things you can do. It releases oxytocin, which reduces stress. Also, it lowers your heart rate and it lowers your blood pressure. Plus, people who pet their dogs are 5 times more likely to live longer than people who just have cats. Plus, the dogs get so much. Daddy's little boy. Daddy's little boy. Daddy's little boy. That's right.
Okay, anyway, works with fur babies too. So I'm not putting down cat people. Actually, I'm going to say something good. I teach in a business department. Do you know how much Kitty-chan makes for Sanrio every year? $6 billion. Yeah, isn't that amazing? And they suggest that one reason she's so successful is she has no mouth. So she is feeling exactly what you're feeling. So people feel this emotion, feel almost like empathy from her. Now, again, a character I don't really know much about is Tyra Banks. Because I've been in Japan forever, and I don't current American culture, I'm hopeless. But she is she's a television personality, which again I never know what that means, and a model. But she is famous for something called the Smize, and she will explain it.
A smize, a fierce, intense eye expression.
typically done with the eyes squinting, with maximum focus and intensity. Otherwise known as smiling with the eyes. I'm not smizing, and now I'm smizing.
Okay, now the smize is not the science part of this, okay? But it is related. But I want to try a little experiment. Can I ask you all to stand up? Because you've been sitting down for 35 minutes. And face a partner. And what you're going to do is one person, decide who's going to start. One person is going to try smizing. Okay, face partner, your mouth is neutral. Now, if that's difficult, you have this option, but don't smile. It's just with your eyes. Try squinting a little bit and try to smile with your eyes. Go. No, don't move your mouth. Yeah. Okay, enough time to try it? Great, have a seat, have a seat. The part that has to do with oxytocin, okay, I can't vouch for the veracity of smizing, but what I can do is the part that has to do with oxytocin is eye contact. And eye contact triggers oxytocin, which is why I need to pick somebody. Who's somebody in the room who does not know me personally? Like former students and stuff do. Okay, because you're in the middle. So what I'm going to do is make very, very strong eye contact. And I'm like, exactly, right? It feels really creepy because it's eliciting oxytocin, and you don't want to elicit oxytocin with me, right? Which yeah. And as I said, I teach in a women's university, so you know, we talk about this kind of stuff, and that's why it feels uncomfortable when somebody's staring at you and you don't want it. Oxytocin, and you know, I said everything's more complex than it looks, and I always worry about, you know, a 1-hour talk on everything you need to know about brain science, because there's a dark side to oxytocin. It is connected to envy and jealousy, which makes sense when you think you're bonding. Well, you take that to an extreme and you get envy and jealousy. It's related to tribalism. And please note, speaking of tribalism, it says us and them. It does not say U.S. Okay, I'm not getting political here. It is connected to violence in aggressive people. Yeah. So and it has been connected to racism and stuff like that because of the, you know, the group orientation. 2 TED Talks that are diametrically opposed to each other that are worth watching. I think we all love TED Talks, right? And it's all interesting stuff. Look at one by Paul Zak, who's a neuroscientist, who's talking about trust, morality, and oxytocin. And he does, among other things, he does like saliva tests at weddings. Who's the happiest person at a wedding? The bride. The bride. Who's the second happiest person? The bride's mother. But anyway, very interesting stuff about, and he calls himself Dr. Love. Another neuroscientist, Molly Crockett, who was someplace in the UK, now she's at Yale, has a session called Beware Neurobunk, where she basically says Paul Zak's TED Talk is full of crap. And it's really interesting to see here. These both neuroscientists, highly respected people, can have very, very different takes on it, and I think it's worth looking at. I want to keep moving. Endorphins. Endorphins are nature's painkiller, which is why I just love this slide, because tattoos are really painful, right? How many of you like roller coasters? Yeah, just so you know, you're in Nagoya. Nagashima Spa Land is only an hour away from here. It's a wonderful place. But that feeling, you're on a roller coaster, and you're going to the top, and all of a sudden, you're at the top, and there's that pause, and your heart is kind of like... Yeah? That's not endorphin. That is adrenaline, epinephrine. And it's interesting, it's a combination of epinephrine, which is an energizer, and cortisol, which is the fear hormone. Cortisol is really big. There's NPR just started a daily science podcast, and the one yesterday was about, part of it was related to cortisol and Halloween, and why we love to be scared, and because it's that combination of adrenaline and cortisol. Epinephrine, or endorphin, is what's responsible for runner's high. So if you're running and all of a sudden, oh geez, that's going to kill me, and then, oh, and it masks the pain. That's the point of endorphin. It lasts about 20 minutes. And a good example of endorphin is this lion is chasing a gazelle. And if the gazelle gets bit, the endorphin will mask the pain so the gazelle can try to keep escaping. And if it doesn't work, at least the endorphin masks some of the pain. I mean, it's sad, but that's the function. And there are some interesting... can you guys prepare the... there are interesting ways to stimulate endorphin, one of which is laughter. Yeah? Another way is crying, or at least tearing up. How many of you like sad movies? Yeah, you go to a movie and you cry. It's like it feels really good, right? That's endorphin. And spicy food. Yes. Which we're getting there. We're in good shape on time. Do you know about laughter yoga? It is a real kind of yoga. Yoga is largely about breathing, right? And what's laughter? It's exchanging. This is Dr. Madan Kataria, who is a medical doctor from Mumbai, India. And he was in Japan a few years ago. I used to have hair. So did he at one point. But he did some workshops on laughter yoga. And he suggests a couple things are really, really important. Number one, eye contact. Because laughter is contagious, right? And you're more likely to start laughing if somebody's making eye contact with you. And clapping. And he says clap this way, not this way. Because you have more like acupressure points in contact. And he says fake it till you make it. We'll get there in a second. And he suggests starting like this. Can you stand up and make a circle at eye contact? Yeah. And you're just doing something like this. It doesn't matter how many people, just whatever's handy. 3, 4, 5. And go like, ho, ho, ha, 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 ho, ho, ha, 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 ha. Okay, and if you do it enough, a lot of times people will just spontaneously break into laughter even though there's nothing particularly funny. I do not have a particularly contagious laugh. Beth Agnew, who's a teacher in Canada, does. And she explains...
Yes, it's that time of year again, final exam time. That means you need the final exam laugh. And need I remind you that laughter helps you think better. It helps you remember, and it helps reduce your stress when you're taking an exam. So if you're not laughing before you're going into your exams, you need to laugh anyway. Laugh for no reason, laugh your stress away, and good luck on your exams.
Okay, you get the idea. Can you sit down? Can you make about 5 groups? Because that's how many bowls of tortilla chips we have. Can I have, pardon? Oh, yeah. Okay, 6 groups. Can you make about 6 groups?
Yes.
And just sit down. Yeah. Here's one group. You just have to be close enough that you can get at some tortilla chips. Here's one group, and you guys will come up and just grab some tortilla chips. Okay. Now, excuse me, we got to go really quickly. In your group, there are a number of ways to do it, and we're going to kind of, this next few minutes is based on chaos complexity theory. What we have is 2 stories that I hope will touch your heart. Okay? And in your little group, like, okay, if you have 6, maybe do 3 people, 3 people. Take about 1 minute, figure out who's doing what. One person is going to read the illness story. One person is going to read the motherhood story. And one person is going to do the eating a tortilla chip with mindfulness. This is real. This is an eating meditation. Okay? In your group, decide who's doing what. Take about a minute to prepare. Ah, my students. You didn't get any tortilla chips? Go back. Can I steal about half of your chips? Oh. Did you find them? Oh, handouts are up here.
There's some more.
Who else needs hi. Who needs tortilla chips? We're okay on that?
You see, who's doing what?
Okay, what's going to happen? Hi. In your group, there's either 3 or 6 speakers. What I'd like you to do is Asan, please just read story number 1 in a nice, relaxed way. Partner, you may choose to close your eyes and imagine it. You may choose to read along. In-class students obviously often choose to read along because it helps with comprehension. And then B, read story number 2. And enjoy it. Notice your emotion. Notice your feeling. And then one person or 2 people lead your group through eating the tortilla chip with mindfulness. And so just a little bit about how to, do not do, you're going to eat a tortilla chip with mindfulness. First pick up the chip and then look at it. It's like, you're going to eat a tortilla chip with mindfulness. First pick up the chip. Look at it closely. Imagine you've never seen this before. Really look. You get what I'm saying? You're trying to, a very relaxing voice. About 5 minutes for this, for all 3 steps. Go.
Stopped going to school. He underwent chemotherapy and the cancer stopped growing.
Yesterday you were telling me you were hungry. Hi.
Excuse me.
These are my students.
One person should read aloud.
Yeah, one person read the story to the group.
Yes.
And then second person read this story. And then third person direct everybody through the meditation.
There we go, sir. That was a good time. Okay.
Did it just die now, or?
A little bit, but there's still a mic in there, so it
Oh, okay.
might be okay.
Good, good.
A little bit quieter. For a few minutes.
Yeah.
Imagine you don't never see this before. Really smell the flavor. Notice the red powder.
Notice the spice.
That's probably the spice. I wonder if
what it feels like to break off of
they all become slightly different.
piece in your mouth, but don't bring
Now, bring it to your nose.
Put it on your tongue.
Breathe in.
Notice what it feels like sitting on your tongue. Notice how you're enjoying it. Notice your mouth getting wet with saliva. Now bite off it.
Now,
Your brain knows.
feel what it feels like to break off a piece.
Notice the spicy
Put
flavor.
the piece in your mouth.
Notice how it's
Just put it on your tongue.
bite off another piece. Enjoy it. Notice the sound as you
Feel what it feels like sitting on your tongue.
eat the rest of the chip like this.
Notice your mouth getting wet with saliva. Your brain knows something good is coming. Notice the spicy flavor. Notice how you are enjoying the taste. Now, bite off another piece. Notice the sound as you do
Feel what it feels like sitting on your tongue. Notice your mouth that's wet by saliva. Honestly, like your brain knows something good.
Just put it on your tongue. Feel what it feels like sitting on your tongue. Notice your mouth getting wet with saliva. Your brain knows.
Bite off another.
Notice the spicy flavor.
Notice the sound as you
Next.
Okay, guys, can I? That is an actual meditation. Most people with meditation, you think, you know, sit in the lotus position and go to sleep. This actually, this is a trick I learned from John Kabat-Zinn, who's the person who kind of introduced Buddhist meditation in a non-religious way to America. And he starts with an eating meditation because it's not so weird. So I do this with my students as a way to introduce this kind of thing. Go ahead and have the rest of the tortilla chips if you want. It's supper time. And I need to go really quickly. We were eating with mindfulness, so you do it slowly. Okay, 2 more chemicals and 5 more minutes, or 10 more minutes actually. Cortisol, which, as I said, that might seem weird to include in a happiness presentation, because this is the stress hormone, which maybe that's why the symbols are but cortisol is a positive thing. How many of you have kids? Yeah? A parent protecting your child from perceived danger, you're going to get a cortisol rush. Avoiding fights that you'll lose. Yeah, so for the past couple of years I've been saying, so I think maybe Hillary Clinton had a cortisol deficit, and now we'll see what's happening with the president. Things that scare you, touching fire, right? That does cortisol, which keeps you safe. the purpose of evolution, almost every aspect, is just to keep you alive. Do you know about this onsen in Nagano, I think it is? Somebody did the test, because winter's got to be really tough for monkeys. They experience 20% less cortisol when they're in the onsen in the winter. And doesn't anybody else first thought, like, Kaken grants are already over the deadline? But why can't I think of studies like that? Anyway, I want to move on to our last one, BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. John Rady, this is a book I highly recommend, by the way. It's about exercise and all the good things. John Rady at Harvard describes BDNF as, it's like Miracle Grow for the brain. Miracle Grow is a really famous fertilizer. Here we go. They found lab rats doing aerobic exercise learn mazes 2 to 12 times faster. Of course, then they have to get them in those little latex suits, which is hard. But schools with physical education classes, and Japanese are like, well, of course schools have physical education classes. In America, many schools have eliminated physical education, art, music, all the things that make life worthwhile. Students who have physical education classes do better on science and math tests. What's that got to do with, what's science and math got to do with PE? BDNF, right? Rady talks about the Naperville, Illinois school system, which is right outside of Chicago, that gets math and science scores that are like Singapore. And that just normally doesn't happen in American schools. Exercise. They have everybody essentially hooked to a Fitbit. So the people who get the best grades are not necessarily the jocks, the athletes. It's because a lot of times, somebody who's fat works harder when you're doing any kind of exercise. So they get their PE grades based on heartbeat. And after exercise, you're 20% faster at learning vocabulary, which this is a German study. I'm skeptical because it's learning an artificial language, and I think learning vocabulary is a lot more complex than that. But that's what they found in the clinical trials. This is Dr. Wendy Suzuki, neuroscientist at New York University, and New York University is a really good school. She wrote Healthy Brain, Happy Life. Essentially, she started off studying the hippocampus, which is part of the brain that deals with memory, and especially moving from working memory to long-term memory. But she eventually moved into exercise because it has to do, they're so connected. I'd like to show you a video. This is a short video from TEDx Women. And again, can you stand up? And try to get at least 1 meter between you and the person next to you. And just do what she does, say what she says, and hi.
But it's one thing to talk about exercise, and it's another to do it. So I'm going to invoke my power as a certified exercise instructor to ask you all to stand up. We're going to do just 1 minute of exercise. It's call and response. Just do what I do, say what I say, and make sure you don't punch your neighbor, okay? Music. 5, 6, 7, 8. It's right, left, left. And I say, I am strong now. Let's hear you.
I am strong now.
Ladies, I am Wonder Woman strong. Let's hear you.
I am Wonder Woman strong.
Boom, uppercut, right and left. I am inspired now.
You say it.
I am inspired now. Let's move. Pull it down, right and left, right and left. I say, I am on fire now. You say it.
I am on fire now.
And done. Okay, good job.
All right.
Thank you. I want to leave you with one last thought, and that is bringing exercise in your life will not only give you a happier, more productive life today, but it will protect your brain from incurable diseases, and in this way, it will change the trajectory of your life for the better. Thank you very much.
Great. Have a seat. Have a seat. That is what I call an energy break. I do these little 5-minute or less activities. Sometimes they involve language, like that one involved listening. Sometimes they're just physical, but 5-minute physical activities that just get the energy moving. And on the back of your gray handout, I just a couple months ago, I'm now up to 15 of them, which is how many weeks most of us have in most semesters. So I do a lot of my classes 1 a week. And just pick and choose, jump around as a way of even the ones that don't involve language. 5 minutes of physical activity gives the students so much more energy. It's a worthwhile time investment. A little bit more exercise. A single workout, one-off, one time, increases dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline, which gives you a more positive mood. It increases the ability to shift and focus attention, which for a lot of students, that's an issue. Increases reaction time. Long-term exercise, getting into a routine, increases the volume of brain cells in the hippocampus. As I said, that's long-term memory. Increases attention and mood, and positive mood, and protects the brain, hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, from aging. So energy breaks, there's a bunch on your handout. They're all free to download. If you don't have PowerPoint easily in your classroom, you can still download them. They all have an exercise and a little bit of brain science in very easy to understand, student understandable ways. That is your brain on happiness. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Last thing I want to mention. First of all, thanks to ABEX for sponsoring me as featured speaker this year. I'm not, as you said, we've been here an hour. I haven't said anything about any books. The books I'm not talking about is English Teaching and the Science of Happiness, which is a book I wrote. And the reason I'm mentioning this today is it's normally 3,650 yen, but they're doing a JALT sale for 2,500 yen. And after my session tomorrow, the booths close very shortly after that. So if you're interested, please stop by ABEX. But anyway, thank you all for your time. And please take a minute to thank the interns. They've left now, but the ones who were sitting in the back were my students, and I was glad to see them. But anyway, thank you all. If anybody wants more handouts, please, share them with a friend. Thank you. Go make one last thing. I mentioned